We're learning the Gemara today on Daf Chaf Amud Beis in Masechta Yoma on the bottom of the Yomot. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Braisa. This is in continuation to what we said before about the sound of the sun that cuts through the sky that there is during the day. So the Gemara here says, the Braisa says, Shalish, Kailis, Heilchen. There are three sounds that are in the world that go Misayf, Ha'olam, Vatsaifai, from one end of the world to the other end of the world. V'yeloein, and the following are the sounds. Koil Galgal Chama, the sound of the ball of the sun that goes through the sky. The Koil Hamayna Shel Reimi, and the sound of the noise that there are, and all the multitudes of people in Rome. The Koil Neshama B'shar Sheyetzim Min Haguf, and the sound of the neshama when it leaves the body. So as most Mefarshim say, it doesn't refer to a physical sound. Some say it refers to the publicity that there is when a person passes away from the world. People know about it from one end of the world to the other. V'yashayimrim, and others say af leida. Also by the birth, there is a sound that, or a koil, a rumor about it, that goes from one end of the world to the other. V'yashayimrim, others add af ridia, also ridia, which is a malach, and this is the malach that's appointed on the irrigation of the fields, and he calls out to the rain from above and from below to come and irrigate the fields. Ubaya Rabbana Rachmi, and the Rabbanan begged for mercy on neshama regarding the soul, v'shah sheyetzim min haguf, when it comes out of the body, ubetlua, and they will mevatel the sound that this makes. Marsha says actually what it means is that when Mashiach comes, it says ubila mavas lanetzach, that death will be swallowed forever. Rabbanan begged Rachmim that they can beg for someone's life to save his life, that he shouldn't leave from the world. Tanya Kavasei Rab Shila, we learned in the Braisa that says like Rab Shila, going back to what it said in the Mishnah regarding Kriyas HaGever. So there was a machlokes between Rav and Rab Shila, what that means. So we have a Braisa here that says like Rab Shila that Kriyas HaGever refers to a rooster. So the Braisa says, Hayetzel Derech, a person that goes out on the way, Kaidim Kriyas HaGever, before the rooster makes his noise. So Damai Beroishai, his blood is on his head. If any shed or any mazik, he gets harmed in any way, it's because he went in the middle of the night. Rabbi Yeshua says, At Yishna, he has to wait until the sound of the rooster is twice. Another opinion is he should wait until 3 times the rooster makes a noise. What kind of rooster are we speaking about? Betarnagol Beinani, a mid-sized rooster. So we see here clearly in this Braisa that the expression of Gever refers to a rooster. Rav Yudah said of the name of Rav, regarding what we learned in the Mishnah, that in the time of Aliyah, when Yidden were Oile Regal, so there was so many Yidden that filled the Azara there, and the Gemara here goes through different things and Nisim that happened in the Beis HaMikdash. B'shah sheYisrael Oilen LeRegal, we Yidden came and were Oile Regal to the Beis HaMikdash, Oimdin Tzfufin. They stood, they were squeezed together, so squeezed together that they were almost like hovering in the air. But when they had to bow down, so then they bowed down and they had enough space. Rashi says they had enough space of 4 amas to be able to bow down, and the reason is so that one should not hear the vidui, the confession of his friend. So this was the nest in the Beis HaMikdash. There's a taich that it says in some Sfarim, Oimdim Tzfufim, as long as you stand for yourself, then you feel squeezed. But if you're humble and you bottle, and so you bow down, and then revachim, then you feel that there's enough space for you. V'nim shachin, and the crowd of people dragged itself all around, achas asrama chayre beis hakapeiris, all the way to the end on the other side of the Azara, behind the Kodesh HaKadoshim, where there were 11 amas there, between the wall of the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the wall of the Azara. Yidden were all the way around over there in that area as well. So the Gemara asks, Mai Ka'ama, what's the Braisa saying here? The order of the Braisa is not clear. It starts off saying that they were squeezed, but then it says that when they bowed down, they became spacious. And then it says that they went all around. But if it became spacious, so why is he saying that there was no space, that they had to go all around? So the Gemara answers, Hachi Ka'ama. This is the order of how you have to understand the Braisa. Even though they were very squeezed, so much so that the Yidden had to extend all the way around to behind the Kodesh HaKadoshim, V'oimdim Tzfufim, they were standing squeezed, but when they bowed down, they bowed down and there was a space of 4 amas for everyone to bow down. This is one of the 10 miracles that occurred in the Beis HaMikdash. It says in the Mishnah in Ovis, there were 10 miracles that occurred in the Beis HaMikdash. The first one is Lo yipila isha mereach b'sar hakodesh. A woman did not lose her child from the smell and the aroma that there was from the meat, from the karbanis, that would bring such a big desire, and therefore if you're not going to give her to eat from it, it may be dangerous for her, for the baby. So this never happened in the Beis HaMikdash. According to most Mefarshim, this means that the woman never even had that desire, so there wouldn't be an issue. V'lo hisriach b'sar hakodesh me'olam. And the meat in the Beis HaMikdash never spoiled. V'lo nireh zvuv b'beis hamitbachayim. And there was never a fly that was found in the butcher house, in the place over there where they shechted the karbanis. V'lo ira keri l'kohen gadol b'yom kippurim. And there was never that the kohen gadol became tameh with the tumah of a keri on Yom Kippur. V'lo nimtza psul. And there was never found to be any invalidation be'omer, regarding the carbon omer, which is brought on the second day of Pesach, u'b'shtei alechem, the shtei alechem brought in Shavuos, u'b'lechem aponim every Shabbos. And as Rashi explains, that if there would be a psul in any of these three, then you wouldn't have what to bring the carbon from, because the starting with the omer, the wheat, or actually the barley, was cut the second night of Pesach, and they were only allowed to cut the exact amount that they needed, and then they would sift it, especially, and prepare it for the carbon omer. If this becomes puzzle, they don't have another barley to bring the carbon from. And the same with shtei alechem, which was baked from before Yontif. If it becomes puzzle on Yontif itself, they're not allowed to bake it on Yontif. And the same with also the bread from Shabbos. If it becomes puzzle, so then they can't put it on the shulchan, on the table, and then they won't have bread until the following Shabbos. So this is a nest that happened in the Beis HaMikdash, that none of these ever became puzzle. Oimdim tzfufim, as we mentioned before, they would stand squeezed together, umishtachavim revachim, and they bowed down, and they were spacious. V'lo hizik, nochosh, va'akrav, b'Yerushalayim me'olam. Snake or a scorpion never harmed anybody while he was in Yerushalayim. And v'lo yoma adam lachaveiroi, and a person never said to his fellow, tsar li amakoim sha'olim b'Yerushalayim. The place of Yerushalayim is too narrow, too squeezed to be able to live here in Yerushalayim when they came to Be'olah Regel. So the Mefarshim HaMedayik, I believe the Chassam Sofer says that the Mishnah here says v'lo yoma adam lachaveiroi, meaning that the place was pretty squeezed. However, the feeling that they had because of the specialty of being there, for being Oile Regel, and the love that they had for the Eibishter, so nobody felt being squeezed while they were there in Yerushalayim. Now the Gemara asks a question on this Mishnah. Pasach b'Mikdash, it begins saying that there were 10 miracles in the Beis HaMikdash, v'sayim b'Yerushalayim, and it concludes, including also miracles that happened in Yerushalayim. So the Gemara answers, Ikke tarti achrenaise. The two that are mentioned here that happened in Yerushalayim, the Nachash and the Akrav, and the V'layama Adam L'Chavei Tzarli Amakim, so we replaced them with another two that happened in the Beis HaMikdash. The Tanya we learned in the Braise, Me Oilam Lekibu Gishamim Eish Shel Atzia Marocha. The rain never caused the fire of the Beis HaMikdash to be extinguished. V'oshan Amarocha, and the smoke that came up from the fire on the Mizbeach, Afila Kol Arucha She'Ba'olam Bois, by any strongest winds in the world that would come and blow at it, they don't move it from its place, it would go up, straight up, and it wouldn't spread out. So therefore, those are the two that replaced the other ones that were mentioned that are only in Yerushalayim. Mara asks further, but are there no other miracles that occurred in the Beis HaMikdash? Vatani Rav Shmaya b'Kal Nabai, Rav Shmaya taught in the city Kal Nabai, Shivrei Kli Cheres, the broken earthenware that there was from what they cooked, or the meat of the karbanis in it. So that whatever the pots, earthenware, it gets cooked in, so earthenware, it absorbs, and you can't get it out from the walls of this pot. So if it remains there, after the time when the karbanis are allowed to be eaten, so it becomes nicer. And so what do you do with these pots? It has to be broken, it has to be buried. The miracle was that it was swallowed up in the ground over there in its place. If it wouldn't be swallowed up in its place, so over a period of time, you would have heaps and heaps of these garbage of broken earthenware in that place. So it got swallowed up. Abaye said similar, another miracle. Mura v'noitza, the crap and the feathers of the birds that were brought as a carbon, Vidishun Mizbeach Apnimi, and the ashes that were removed from the inner Mizbeach, Vidishun HaMenaira, the ashes removed from the Menaira, Nivlaim B'Mekaiman, they also got swallowed in their place. So we see there were more miracles in the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara goes back to the Mishnah before and says, Psuli Tlosa Havachashvinu B'chad. So the psulim that we had before, so we mentioned that there were the three karbanis of Omer, Shtei Alechem, and Lechem Aponim, those three that never became pasul. So we don't count them as three, but Chashvinu B'chad, we count them really as one. So therefore, Apik Trei, so you have to subtract two, because from these three it becomes only one. Now Va'ayel Trei, so let's add another two that we just mentioned here, which is the Klicheres that were swallowed in its place. And then the other things that Abaye mentioned, the Mura, the Neitzen, the Dishon, that got swallowed in its place. But the Gemara says, if that's how you count, so Ihachi, if so, Bluin Nami, regarding what got swallowed up in the ground, so Treyave, it was two different things that we counted here, we should really count it as one. Just like by the Psulim, you count it all as one, so you should count this also all as one. So Chasraluhu, so you're still missing one from the 10 Nisim that happened in the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara answers, Ikenami Achriti. There was one more miracle in the Beis HaMikdash. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Nes Gadol Haya Nasa Belechem Aponim. There was a great miracle that occurred with the Lechem Aponim. Silukai Kisidurai. That when they removed it on the following Shabbos after it was brought, so they waited a week, and then the following Shabbos, it was just as hot and fresh like the day that they put it on. Shenem, as the pasuk says, Lasum Lechem Chaim B'Yayim Yilakchay. The place there, the warm bread, on the day that it's taken away. Even on the day that it's taken away, it was also warm. Frag the Gemara, but there still seems to be that there were more miracles in the Beis HaMikdash. V'su leke, was there only these 10 and not more? But V'amar Rav Levi said, we have a tradition from our fathers that that the space of the Arain did not take up any space. Meaning, as Rashi explains, the place of the Kodesh HaKadoshim was 20 by 20 amas. And we have a tradition that on both sides of the Arain, there were 10 amas that you measured. So that does not include the space of the Arain itself. The Arain itself was an amma and a half by 2.5 amas. And you measured on each side of the Arain, and you had 10 amas, 20 amas in total. So it didn't account for the actual space of the Arain itself. So the Arain didn't take up any space. That was another miracle that happened. This is a miracle that's discussed at length in different Maimarim and Chassidus, and here the point is that this is sort of a miracle where you have two opposites happening at the same time. Because in order for the Arain to be the Keli of the Arain, that the way it's supposed to be, it needs to have that exact measurement of 1.5 amma by 2.5 amas. So it requires that measurement. And yet at the same time, we need the measurement, and the measurement was there. When you measured the Arain itself, it had that space. But yet at the same time, when you measured on both sides of the Arain, it was 10 amas on each side. And the total space of the Kodesh HaKadoshim was 20 by 20 amas. So this is two opposites happening at the same time. And this is the major nest that happened here in the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the presence of the Shekhinah there that combines the two opposites inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Rav Yinai said in the name of Shmuel another miracle. Kruvim, the Kruvim that were built on top of the Aron in the time of Shlomo HaMelech ben Nesa Yomdin, they stood with a miracle. As Rashi explains, the wingspan of these Kruvim were large enough to cover the entire space of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, 20 by 20 amas. And we don't have any space to account for the actual bodies of the Kruvim themselves. There were bodies made of like little faces of little children, and there's no space to account for them. And it was standing there. So we see that there were another two miracles here in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Answers the Gemara, Nise de Broi Kochashev. We're only counting the 10 miracles of what occurred outside, in the Azara, or places that can be seen. Nise de Broi, the Gavoy, that is, Loi Kochashev. The Nisim that happened on the inside, here in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, we're not Loi Kochashev, that we don't count. Asks the Gemara, Yachi, if so, Lechem Aponim Nami, Nise de Gavoyhu. The Nisim that happened with the Lechem Aponim is also inside, it's inside the Heichel, and it's not outside for everyone to see. Answers the Gemara, Lechem Aponim Nise de Beroihu. The Lechem Aponim is also considered to be a nes on the outside that everyone could see. Why? Omer Reish Lakish said regarding the Shulchan. Mai Dechsev, what is the meaning of the pasuk that it says Al HaShulchan HaTohir? That the bread should be placed on the pure Shulchan. Tohir, when it says that it's pure, Meklal Shu Tomei. That means that it could become Tomei. Kli Eitz Ha'asi L'Nachasu. So the question is, this is a piece of furniture basically made out of wood that's made to stay in one place. V'chol kli eitz ha'asi l'nachas, and the rule is any kli eitz that's made to stay in its place ena makabel tumah. It's not susceptible to any tumah. V'chaitzitz b'fnei tumah, and it also separates from any tumah. So therefore the question is, why does the pasuk have to say tahir, that it's pure? Elam alamet, so that what this teaches me is that they would lift it up at the time when Yidden came for the Yom Tiv to see see the love that the Eibishter has for you, that when you take off the bread it's as hot and fresh as when it was put on, that it was hot in the day that it was taken off. So therefore the Yidden saw this miracle, so it's considered to be a miracle of the outside, and that's why that is counted. Fragt the Gemara, but there was no other miracles in the Beis HaMikdash. But Rav Aishie said, at the time when Shlomo Melech built the Beis HaMikdash, he saw Natabai Kol Minim Megadim Shal Zahav. He planted there golden trees, and it would grow golden fruits bismanon in their time, in the season. And when the wind would blow in them, these fruits would fall down from the trees. There was strong winds that blew in the Levanoi, which is the Beis HaMikdash, and the fruits that came down. When the Goyim came into the Beis HaMikdash to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, Yavesh, it dried up. Shanema, Perach, Levanoin, Umlal. And these trees that was blossoming in the Beis HaMikdash, Umlal was devastated. But the Eibishter in the future is going to give us back this tree there. Shanema, Paroyach, Tifrach, Vesagel, Av, Gilas, Varanin, Kovet Alavanon. It'll blossom again, it'll be happy again, this tree, the honor and this glory of this tree that was in the Levanon and the Beis HaMikdash. So we see over here that there's another miracle that occurred. Answers the Gemara, Kovid Alavona Nitan Lo. That goes together with the pasuk. So the Gemara answers, Nisi the Kavi Loi Kachashiv. A miracle like this that was steady every day, that miracle is not mentioned. We only count the miracles that happen in certain times or in certain places and so on. So the Gemara says, Hashted Asas Lahachi. Now that you come to this conclusion that steady miracles are not counted, the reason why those two miracles are not counted is not only because they were on the inside, but because they're steady every single day. One of the miracles that we mentioned before was that the smoke of the Maracha of the Beis HaMikdash, of the Mizbeach, went straight up. Is there smoke from this fire on the Mizbeach? But Vatanya, we learned in a Braisa that says, 5 unique things were said about the fire of the Maracha of the Mizbeach. Revutzekari, it was crouching in the shape of a lion. Uvara kachama, it was as bright as the sun. V'yeshba mamish, and the fire had a substance to it. V'oichlin lachen kiyevation, and it would consume, it would burn things that are moist like things that are dry. Ve'ena mailash, and also there was no smoke that came out of it. So we see that there was no smoke in this fire. Answers the Gemara, Kikam rinon b'dahedyet. The Braisa before is talking about the fire that descended from heaven, but the fire that was brought from the Hedyet, from the people below, that fire did have smoke. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa, v'nosna b'nei ar nakayin eish al mizbeach. They should place fire onto the mizbeach, al fapish eish yeredes min hashamayim. Although the fire comes down from heaven, mitzvah lahavi min hahedyet. There's a mitzvah to bring fire from the hedyet as well, and that's the fire that there was smoke, and the miracle occurred that the smoke went straight up. So now it said over here, Revutzakari, the fire that came down from above was crouching in the shape of a lion. But we learned in Abraisa, I saw this fire, and it was crouched in the shape of a dog. Answers the Gemara, it's not a question. Kan b'mikdash rishain. In the first Beis HaMikdash, it was in the shape of a lion, and kan b'mikdash sheni. In the second Beis HaMikdash, it was in the shape of a dog. So now the Gemara asks, wait a minute, in the second Beis HaMikdash, mi havoi, was this fire even there? The fire from heaven, was it even there? What is this that it says in the pasuk? And I will be honored with the Beis HaMikdash. So it's written without the hey at the end. So it's written v'ikaved, but it's v'karinon. The way it's read is v'ikavda, as if it's written with a hey. And this is written about the second Beis HaMikdash, that this will be my honor. but it's written missing that hey at the end of the word. Mai shna de mechusa hey. So why is it missing that hey? Eilu chamisha dvarim. This refers to the 5 different things. Shahayu bein mikdash rishayin lemikdash sheni. The 5 things that were different and that were missing in the second Beis HaMikdash, even though they were there in the first Beis HaMikdash. And the Elohein, these are the 5 things. Arain, the kapayres, the kruvim. One is the Arain, which includes also the kapayres, the cover, and the kruvim as well. Then the Eish, the fire on the Mizbeach. Ushchina, the presence of the Shchina doesn't mean it wasn't there in the second Beis HaMikdash at all, but it wasn't the same as the level of Shchina in the first Beis HaMikdash. And the Ruach HaKodesh. And the Ruach HaKodesh referring to Nevuah that was not in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. And V'urim, V'tumim, which is the name of Hashem that was inside the Chayshen to be used to be able to answer questions. So we see over here that Eish is one of the things, the fire of the Mizbeach that descended from heaven is one of the things that wasn't in the second Beis HaMikdash. Amri, so they answered to this in yes, mehave have. The fire was there in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, but siyuah loy Messiah. But it did not help along with burning the karbanis on the Mizbeach. Tana Rabbana, we learned in another brayso about different types of fires. Sheish, Isha, Ishain. There are 5 or 6 different fires. Yesh echeles ve'ene shaisa. There's a fire that eats, it consumes, but it does not drink. V'yesh shaisa ve'ene echeles. There's a fire that drinks and does not eat. V'yesh echeles v'shaisa. There's a fire that eats and drinks. V'yesh echeles lachin kiyevation. And there's a fire that consumes moist like dry. V'yesh eish doiche eish. There's a fire that pushes away another fire. V'yesh eish echeles eish. And then there's a fire that consumes another fire. And the brayso now will spell out exactly what all these 6 fires are. Yesh eish echeles ve'ene shaisa. A fire that eats but does not consume. That does not drink liquids. Hadidan. That's the fire that we know of here in this world. That any liquids cannot be consumed by the fire. The liquids extinguish the fire. Shaisa ve'ena echeles, a fire that can drink the liquids and it does not eat. The chaylin, this is the fire, the fever, the heat that a person that's sick has in his body, that it draws out all the moisture from him and he has no appetite to eat. Echeles v'shaisa, a fire that both eats and drinks, the Eliyahu. This is the fire that came down by Eliyahu when he was in the Har HaKarmel. The pasuk there says, "V'asamayim asher betalo," and the water that was there, lichacha, it ate everything up, including the moisture that was there as well. Oicheles lachin kiyevation, a fire that consumes what's moist like what's dry. The maracha. This is the fire that we mentioned before that's on the Mizbeach. And yesh eish doiche eish, a fire that pushes away another fire. The Gavriel. This is the fire of Gavriel, the Malach Gavriel that Rashi brings by the story of Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah when he saved them from the Kivshana Eish. So he pushed the fire out of where they were and he pushed it outside, and the people that threw them into the fire got burnt. V'yesh eish, echeles eish, and then there's the fire that consumes other fire, the Shechina. This is the fire of the Shechina. The Amar, Master has taught, Hoishit etzboi beineyen v'sarfon. When it came at the beginning of creation, and the Malachim said, Ma'anish kistiskerena, why are you creating the human being? So the Eibishter came down with a fire, or the Eibishter Kaviyachol stuck out a finger that's a fire and burnt all of these Malachim. So the Gemara now continues and asks another question here. Going back to the fire of the Mizbeach. As we said, the winds, even the strongest winds in the world, cannot move it from its spot that it would go straight up. So the Gemara asks him this, is this true? But Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi said the following. And the night at the end of the last day of Yontif of Sukkot, which would mean Matzah Shmini Atzeres. So then Shmini Atzeres is the time that you daven for the rain. You begin saying Mered HaGeshem. So then at Matzah Yontif they would look at the smoke coming from the Mizbeach. HaKoil Tzoyfen Lashon HaMaracha. Everyone would look there to this smoke, and they would see which way the wind is blowing. So Neite Klapet Tzafein, if they see that the smoke was tilting towards the Tzafein, so that means that there's a wind coming from out of Darim, blowing it towards Tzafein. Aniyim Smeichen, the poor people were happy. Or Balabatim Atzevin. And the people that the Balabatim, the homeowners that had a lot of food stored away in storage, were upset. What's the reason? If there's a wind coming out of the south, out of Darim, that means that there's going to be a lot of rain that year. Too much rain. So even if there's going to grow a lot of fruits and everything in the field, but the peiros that are kept in storage are going to rot. So therefore the balabatim were sad about that. Not the klapid darim, if they saw that the smoke was tilting toward darim, which means that there was a wind coming out of tzafin, aniyim atzevin, so then the aniyim were sad, or balabatim smechem, and the balabatim were happy. Mipnei shegishmei shana muatin, sorry, because it means there's going to be much less rain, enough for the things to grow in the field, and also peiros mishtamrin, and the peiros in the storage is going to be kept, it's not going to rot. So there'll be much less food in the field for the aniyim, but whatever is in storage is going to be kept. Not the klapi mizrach, if the fire, the smoke is going up and it's tilting towards mizrach side, meaning there's a wind coming from ma'ariv side, hakel smeichen. Everybody was happy. That's a wind that'll be just right, just the right amount of rain to grow enough in the fields, and also not too much that it shouldn't rot what is in the storage. Klapi ma'ariv, if there's a wind, if you see that it's tilting towards ma'ariv, meaning there's a wind coming out of mizrach, tilting it to ma'ariv, hakoil atzevin. Then everybody was sad. Because the ozil, so what's the reason everyone's sad? Because over here, this is a kind of wind that just dries up all the seeds. Dries up everything, so nothing's going to grow. So everybody was sad. So here the question is, we see that the smoke coming up from the fire of the Mizbeach would tilt in all kinds of directions. So how could we say that it would go straight up to the sky? And it says the Gemara, the ozil v'asi kidikli. It would tilt like a cedar tree, like a palm tree actually, that would tilt from one direction to another. But yes, but v'evduri lo yavim mivder. But it would not spread out and disperse like smoke usually does. Now another question the Gemara has here. We learned in this Braisa, it said, Klapi Mizrach, if the smoke is tilting towards Mizrach, meaning there's a wind coming out of Ma'ariv, Hakel Smeichen. Everybody's happy. It means there'll be enough rain. Klapi Ma'ariv, if it's tilting towards Ma'ariv, so there's a wind coming out of Mizrach, Hakel Atzevin. Everybody is sad. Frek the Gemara, but Veramino, I'll ask you from a different Braisa that says the opposite. Mizrachis Lo'olam Yafe. A wind that comes out of Mizrach, everybody's happy. Ma'aravis lo'ilam kasha, a wind that comes from Ma'ariv side, so then it's always not good. Ruach tzfainis yafel chitin, a wind coming out of the north is good for the wheat when b'shashe v'yishlish, if that wind comes when the wheat grew already a third. The kasha lezeisim, and it's not good for the olives b'zman shehein chayntin, in the times when the olives are blossoming. Ruach draimis, a wind that comes out of the south. So here it's the reverse. Kasha lechitin b'shashe v'yishlish. It's not good for the wheat if it grew a third. But yafet lezeisim b'zman shein chaytin. But it's good for the olives in the time when it's blossoming. So regarding the difference between what kind of wind the wheat needs and what kind of wind the olive needs, I have a simon for you to know what wind is good for what. Shulchan b'tzafin. The shulchan, which had the breads on it, which is of course made from the wheat, is on the tzafin side. So that's an indication for the fact that the wind from the tzafin is good for it, for the chitim. U'menayre b'darim. The menayre in the Beis HaMikdash that had the olive oil that they lit the menayre with, that is on the darim side to remind, so if that could remind you that what the wind that comes out of the darim is good for the olives. So, hai marbedidei, v'hai marbedidei. Each one that's on their side is going to increase the wind that will be good for what's on the table, the chitim, so that's connected to the table, and the olive oil that's connected to the menorah. So the point is, we see over here that the wind that comes out of Mizrach side is always good. And before, what did we say? That if the smoke of the Mizbeach is going towards Ma'ariv, meaning there's a wind that's coming out of Mizrach side, so then everybody is sad. So what's the story with this wind that comes out of Mizrach? Is it good or is it not good? And says the Gemara, loy kashya, it's not a question. Ha lon, for the people in Bavel, which was a very wet land, and they had a lot of water and moisture there, so when there's a wind coming out of Mizrach, which means that there's going to be less rain, so that was good for them. And that's for the people that are there in Eretz Yisrael. So because Eretz Yisrael is not a land that has less rain, and there's hills and valleys, and therefore it gets dry very quickly, so they rely on the rain more. So therefore for them, the wind coming out of Mizrach is not good. Hadran Allah Shivas Yamim. This is the conclusion of the first Perek of Masechta Yoma.